this META here, Crinacle have opted not to release any kind of information pertaining the driver itself. And I can respect that. I have no issue with it because I don't really care the construction of the inner working of this IEM, because the only thing that matters to me is the experience of using it and the sound itself. It is very well made, entirely made of aluminum. I think CNC machine perhaps, with the kind of precision, with the kind of ergonomic, which is really impressive. And very lightweight as well, at around just under 5 gram, probably like 4.7 gram or 4.8 gram each side, which is quite impressive considering that this is a metal shell IEM. And on top of it, the ergonomic is very well designed as well. As you can see here, at the back of the IEM itself, the bean shape, that thing will fit at least into my ear very snugly, and it does not impart any kind of discomfort. I have been able to wear it for very long period of time, like what I'm doing right now, for the last 3 hours, even no issue at all with discomfort. And the kind of seal, which is considered impressive for a metal shell IEM, because usually metal shell IEM does not seal really well. But it also depends on the kind of ear tip that you have chosen to use. So in this case, this IEM comes with 2 types of ear tip, foam tip and silicone tip. Other than offering different kind of sound, they also offer different kind of comfort level and also seal factor. For example, if you want the most comfort, if you want the most seal, then of course you would prefer to use foam tip, like what I did, 60% most of the time. But if you want a bit more of focus on sound, then perhaps you want to use the silicone tip. The impedance rating of this META is rated at around 27 ohm. I have actually measured myself, and what it means is that this META is super easy to drive, very efficient. As usual, I would normally just use this mobile phone of mine, which is Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV from the 3.5mm single-ended here, and I am already getting the kind of sound which I would consider as wholesome. It is very smooth, it is immersive, it is definitely very entertaining. But how well does it scale when I improve the source? And I started with Venture Electronic Devastator, and true indeed, the best part about this META is that it is super sensitive to different type of sources. When I connect it to the 4.4mm balance of this VE Devastator, I am getting a bit of dynamic enhancement. It is a bit more energetic now, a bit more vibrant, and a bit more colored as well. And it gets even better after that. Once I scale it up further with something like very powerful R2R dongle of Hartfield R1. Now, Hartfield R1 is warm sounding, and my observation is that if you connect it to a warm sounding dongle or DAC amp like Hartfield R1, which is R2R, you're gonna get warm sounding output, which is largely smooth, organic, and natural sounding. And if you connect it to something which is a lot more powerful, a lot more resolving, it gets even better. Now what you're gonna get is something which I would consider as reference grade kind of performance. It responds really well with power. It responds really well with the kind of improvement which iBus or DX340 offer. I am hearing the kind of sound which is very transparent, very engaging, full with the dynamic authority itself, and it is just simply mind-blowing. CrinEar META, the latest sensation coming from Hangout Audio or Crinacle himself. So before I proceed any further, let's just get a bit of perspective. What is this CrinEar META in my hand right now? You might have already known that very recently Crinacle announced the release, or should I say the upcoming 3 IEM that he is releasing, starting with CrinEar Reference, CrinEar META, and also CrinEar Daybreak. So 3 different type of IEM. What is META? Based on what Google is telling me here, it is defined as referring to itself or the convention of its genre, self-referential. So basically what it means is that it is a reference on its own. What Crinacle is trying to achieve, based on my understanding, based on the interview which was conducted with Super Review, this META, especially the reference model, has been designed to create a new reference level. So because if you're familiar with reference, then you might be familiar with diffuse field neutral.
I'm tuning everything to that tilted or modified diffuse field kind of sound signature. And
it is the reference for accuracy. It is reference for, let's say, neutrality. And it is also reference for transparency. But the problem with this reference sound is that it is also regarded as super flat. It is basically not the kind of IEM you want to use to enjoy your music. Long story short, what Crinacle has been mentioning is that he wants to change that. Reference does not have to be flat or lifeless sounding. There's nothing wrong with adding a bit of excitement, and that is why we have this. So Ben, to my understanding, you have spent your time with this Meta for 3 days now.
yeah.
Okay, let's just start with what kind of ear tip did you use, because this Meta comes with 2 ear tip, silicone and foam tip. Which one do you use?
I use the silicone tips. I generally prefer silicone to foam tips. But I actually did a bit of tip rolling comparing with some of the other stuff. I have like the Venus Velvet and some spin fits and a few other things. But it works best with the stock tips that comes with the set.
Stock silicone tips. So
Yes.
most of the time he used that. And for your information, on my part, I use the foam tips most of the time. In fact, 70% of the time and 30% of the time I use the other silicone tip, because my taste and preference dictate that I am getting a bit better result with the foam tips. And how about the sources? What kind of sources do you use?
For something that's more reference, I use my DC Elite.
DC Elite.
So DC Elite is pretty flat, and I pair that just with my phone and connect to this. But also I've tried a few other things. I've tried connecting it to my Cayenne N6 III DAB.
Okay.
I've connected everything to my desktop amplifier to see how it performs with more power. But it does pretty fine just with a dongle, so you don't really need a lot of power with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for myself, for most of the time, of course, my reference, I always use my Ibaso DX340 here, which is my reference dub. For anything which is transparent, accurate, and neutral, uncolored, I use that. And I also use my phone here, which is Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV, to test something which is very basic, 3.5mm single-ended termination. So I get a bit of perspective from both angle. How do you feed it to something which is weak, and how do you feed it something which is a lot more resolving and a lot more powerful? And let's just go straight to the point now. The tuning itself, the sound itself. So how would you describe the overall tuning of this Meta here?
I'd say to my ears, they sound quite balanced.
Balanced.
They are actually very. There isn't anything that is offensive at all. I find that it's a very confident tuning from.
Confident tuning,
yes.
balanced tuning.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing coming from Ben.
Yeah.
And I would like to echo that sentiment. The way I would describe it instead is that something which exhibit maturity.
Yeah.
Maturity in tuning, because we are talking about Crinacle here, right?
Yeah.
Crinacle being Crinacle, if you know him, he has been into this game since forever. He is the guru, the master of sound frequency. He is even declared as measure better. He himself declared that, okay? He measures everything and he knows every bit of sound frequency, and this is the brainchild of that experience and expertise. So he know how to tune something which is very well balanced, especially into his very own IEM. So you can expect maturity when it comes to pace, rhythm, and timing. So what it means is that you can expect the kind of speed and resolution which is non-offensive with proper balance of musicality. So there's smoothness while doing all those things. Technically, I agree with him, very well balanced. So how about, let's say, the upper frequency itself? How would you describe the treble region, anyway from upper mid-range to the treble itself?
I think the treble is very smooth, very nicely tuned. There's just the right amount of airiness, sparkle, no sibilance. Everything's under control there. So yeah, it's a very nice.
And when you say under control, what perhaps the audience might want to know, what kind of music that you mainly test to.
Okay. So I've tried it on practically everything. Except for
metal, rock.
Super heavy metal. I listen to rock, but super heavy. The other thing I don't listen to is orchestral music or classical music. Okay. So these are the two genres I don't listen to. Yeah, but otherwise everything I've tried it. pop, folk music, EDM, jazz. It's all.
So throughout the entire range of music which normally people would listen to, you are saying that the treble performance does not exhibit any kind of offensiveness.
Yeah.
Okay,
It works well with
that's
everything.
my understanding. And I agree with him. You see, I listen to a lot to metal music, rock and metal music, but I also listen a lot to technical jazz, especially technical jazz from Diana Krall, from Cine Ig, and from Hoff Ensemble and stuff like that. And I also listen a lot to classical music. The key thing is that what I'm trying to say is that the upper frequency of this meta, it is very resolving, very good micro detail, macro detail. The energy, the sparkle is all there. The airiness is fairly good, okay? But the thing is that, the best thing is that it does not exhibit any kind of offensiveness anywhere from the pinna region. So you can expect that this meta is free from pinna glare. Okay, what is pinna glare? Pinna glare is that sharpness anywhere from upper mid-range all the way to the treble region. Despite being subjected to listening to energetic music, I am happy to say that it does not sound sharp at all. Okay, perhaps just a little bit spicy, just a tiny bit of spiciness when listening to extreme metal. But if you don't listen to extreme metal like I do, then you don't have to worry about it, because extreme metal usually would require a bit of outright warmth when it comes to the upper frequency. But if you listen to music that people normally listen, no problem at all. But how about mid-range? How would you describe it?
I think the mid-range is also nicely tuned, nicely balanced. It's quite neutral. It's not that forward and it's not that recessed.
Just nice.
Yeah, it's just nice. Yeah.
And would you consider the treble, the mid-range itself, when transparent, is it like kind of a warm, dry, or let's say...
It's warm. It's tuned to be warm, but not super warm. So it's just enough to give the character to vocals, to some body to the vocals, and some emotion there.
Would you say that this thing is more suited for male or female vocal? How would you say?
I think it works well with both.
With both, okay. Impressive. Yeah. And from my perspective, the mid-range is generally, I would describe as being neutral, largely uncolored, okay, with a hint of what he said just now. One is actually being organic sounding. Yeah. So this is another impressive element which I love about this meta. Okay, it is analytical as it is accurate with the mid-range itself, and there are many other IEM in the market, let's just be clear about this, that can offer you the same thing, transparent and accurate mid-range. But usually what happened is that it ended up being a bit dry sounding. But this thing does not sound dry. So that is impressive because while able to emit something which is largely transparent and accurate, it does not sound dry at all with the mid-range. And I am hearing a bit of organic touch to the sound, to the mid-range here, especially when it comes to certain type of female vocal like contralto, or male vocal which is baritone, deep chesty type. You're gonna feel the immersion factor of that vocal and instrument. When it comes to instrument, something like violin, I listen a lot to Vivaldi, classical music. The attack and also the decay of the violin is just simply realistic. That's how I would describe it. It is proper accuracy. Yeah. And while doing all that, definitely I would say that it is immersive. And how about the best part now? The lower frequency. How about you? Do you like the lower frequency of this?
Yeah, I think that's the standout aspect of this tuning.
Out.
Yeah, it's the bass. It's mainly sub-bass focus. So you do get, when you turn it on, when you listen to it, there's going to be something that you hear first. The sub-bass is very deep. It rumbles very deep. I think mid-bass isn't the priority here.
Not priority.
Yeah, no, but it's also very tightly tuned. So it's not baggy at all. It's not bloomy. It's very, very tight.
So basically we're saying it's fast, it's tidy, and it's tight.
Yes.
Okay. And to me, I agree with him.
Yeah.
One of perhaps the beauty thing about this meta here is how Crinacle interpret that lower frequency, which I mentioned earlier, how he said that reference sound should not be flat, it should be fun sounding, it should be rich sounding with the lower frequency. And I would say, yes, true indeed. This thing offers the kind of lower frequency which many people would love, including myself. And I am not even the kind of person who love, big bass. But let me just get a bit of detail here. You see, Ben did mention that focus a lot more on the extension and the sub-bass, and I agree with him. Meta here seems to favor a lot more with the sub-bass here. So what you can expect is that deep extension which is super smooth, okay, tidy, tight at the same time. But I do feel that the mid bass kind of a bit subdued, especially when you listen to certain type of music. Again, must remember certain type of music which require a bit more of mid bass. So if you are metalhead like me, or if you are, let's say, extreme metal or rock, then you might feel that certain element of the mid bass kind of a bit subdued as compared to the sub bass. Because for example, if you listen to kick drum, okay, no problem, because kick drum usually dwell into the sub bass region. But if you listen to snare drum, then you might feel that the attack of the snare drum for the mid bass itself kind of a bit less emphasized as compared to the sub bass. But if you listen mostly to electronic music, pop music, jazz music, blues music, you're just gonna love the bass performance of this Meta. I would say that it is immersive as it is, fun sounding yet mature at the same time. So all in all, impressive with the lower frequency. How about technicalities, especially the soundstage, the staging of this Meta? How would you describe it?
I find the soundstage is nice. It's wide, but it's more on the wide side rather than tall. It doesn't go very tall, and it's not very deep. But I think for the price that it's asking for, I think it's does a very good job for that.
And how about the emphasis of the staging itself? Would you say that it is like left and right, or circular, or holographic, or how?
I think as you were saying, we were talking about it. You were saying that it's more circular, which is true. Yeah, it's a circular kind of sound.
Okay.
It actually it does better than the Hydis MP145, which is
a bit more left and right.
yeah, but that's just flat. So this one has a bit of height, but it's not that high still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically what he's trying to say there, and I agree with him,
Yeah.
the description is like circular,
Yeah.
okay? Not exactly super wide and not exactly super tall, but it also means that the projection, spatial holographic projection is quite impressive.
Yeah.
So which means that pinpoint accuracy is also good. So you get to hear instrument, still kind of a bit biased towards being left and right, a bit traditional stereo kind of presentation, but it is holographic. It is holographic to a point that I would even say it is suitable also for gaming, for movie watching, stuff like that, for anything which require binaural or ambience type of output. And on top of it, I don't have to say much when it comes to technicality, resolution, imaging, layering, separation, definitely top notch. But the key element is that the most important thing about this Meta is that while doing all that technical stuff, like what Ben mentioned just now, what was it? Balance, right?
Yeah.
Balance. So you can expect very well balance between technicalities and musicality. Thank you so very much for watching the video until the end. Without skipping, I hope. Now click like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram under the name of AndyAV. And also, if you'd like to support me directly, because all of my videos and reviews are unpaid, I am not earning anything, you can join the membership below for behind the scene, especially for AAV Insider and above, which will allow you to see what I am doing behind the scene, and I will share some of the items which I would normally not share in the public.